Hi everybody, Kathy Syrett from the Confident Leader Journey here. Now, I have a few vlogs prepared and kind of semi-scripted and ready to go, but actually I wanted to talk more from the heart this week. Recently we've had Neurodiversity Celebration Day or week, and we're currently in Autism Awareness Month. And I'd like to speak to that because handling diversity of any kind is crucial for a leader. And I've already done one talk in a series on diversity. So it seemed to me that it would make sense to have a little conversation today about neurodiversity. Now, one of the biggest challenges with neurodiversity is who gets to talk about it. Now, as someone who has ADHD and is autistic myself, I feel that I can speak for myself here. But of course, one thing to realize is that we're all human beings and we're all multifaceted individuals. So my lived experience won't necessarily be the same as other people's lived experience of ADHD or autism. And I certainly don't have any lived experience of dyslexia or OCD or a lot of the other neurodivergencies. However, I feel that with my position as a leadership coach and a leadership trainer, and my experience of both working with neurodiversity and being neurodiverse myself, that a short vlog on this could be valuable to many of you. So let's take a look at the whole topic of neurodiversity and leadership. So one of the first challenges we hit when we're looking at neurodiversity is actually the language that we use. And it's interesting because I myself, before I was diagnosed with autism or as autistic, I myself was using language that I thought was perfectly acceptable. However, since my diagnosis, when I've been a bit more active on some of the groups, I've discovered that I was significantly out of date. So one of the first things to think about with neurodiversity is quite often it's a fear of getting the language wrong that stops us from speaking up. And so it's a good guide if you want to get into understanding more about neurodivergence and have more neurodiversity in your organization, that you actually find good sources for getting that information. Now, that's why this month is incredible. If you go on LinkedIn now and you type in Autism Awareness Month, you will get access to so many resources that will bring you up to date on the language around autism, up to date on the language around neurodiversity in general. That it's an incredibly good time to be looking at these questions. Okay, so that's one of the first challenges as a leader in handling neurodiversity is purely and simply the language. And quite often that makes some of us scared to talk about it because we're not sure how to speak about it. Okay? Now, one of the basic rules is that, for example, if you approach me and say, I hear you have been diagnosed as neurodivergent, would you help me understand how I can interact more effectively with you? I will not be offended at that. I don't expect you to be fluent in, I suppose, what we could colloquially call the language of my tribe. Good Lord, I'm not fluent in it yet. So in a way, it's just like interacting with anybody else, isn't it, as a leader? We'll come back to that point in a minute. So the language is a challenge. Okay. And if you remember, cast your mind back, language is always a challenge when we're working with differences, whether it's a physical disability, whether it's a learning difficulty, whether it's a neurodivergence. The language does change. And the reason for that is because in recent years, the people who are in those tribes have taken control of the language. And that's why it's changed. And this is why I think it's important that we put the effort into understanding the language, because now the language is being defined to a great extent by people who are actually on the inside of those tribes rather than people looking from the outside. And I think that's really powerful, that people get to identify themselves and the language they want to use. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we're frightened of the issue itself. We're always kind of a little bit frightened and concerned and worried about things we don't understand. Okay? For most of us, the understanding only comes when we meet someone we know or interact with on a regular basis who has some form of neurodivergence, and then we learn because we listen to them. But up to that point, there's a little bit of fear and a little bit of uncertainty. How can we make sure that our leadership is neurodiverse friendly? How can we make sure that our processes and systems are open and accessible to everybody, regardless of how their brain works? Okay. Well, here's an idea. When you actually drill down and look at the guidelines for interacting with people who are neurodiverse, it really comes down to listening to them as individuals. And isn't that something that we as leaders should be doing anyway? I mean, if you've got a team of people, you know that one person likes working one way, another person likes working another. Maybe somebody likes more autonomy, somebody else likes more direction. How is knowing that any different from knowing how your neurodiverse employee would like to be managed and thrives and what they need to be effective? If you have an individual who needs something written out instead of given verbally, is that really that big a deal? If you have somebody who needs meetings to be scheduled ahead of time with a clear topic and agenda, isn't that just good management practice? So I think one of the things I wanted to say to you in this vlog was let go of that fear. Let go of that uncertainty. Because if you're an effective leader who connects with your team on the basis that they are all individual human beings with different needs and different things that will either get in their way or help them perform well and thrive, then you're already doing what's necessary to be effective with neurodiverse employees. Okay? So that's my challenge to you, I suppose, really. Neurodiversity is a great opportunity for you to challenge yourself and challenge your mindset on leadership. Is your leadership of the such that this is how things are around here and you have to fit in? Which doesn't just challenge people with neurodiversity, it challenges everybody. If you've got a sales team where one of your rules is that you have to go to drinks after work and you have to socialize and mix and show extrovert behavior, that actually doesn't get the best out of the less extrovert members of your team, regardless of neurodiversity. So if as a leader, your focus is not going, this is how it should be done, and having a set of drones doing that, if you really want to optimize your team and get that innovation and creativity and passion that comes from people being allowed to be their authentic selves at work, then you won't have an issue with managing people in your team, whether they're neurodiverse or not. So here's my challenge to you. Which of those leaders are you? Where could you focus more on people as individual human beings and enabling them to thrive under your leadership, rather than forcing them to comply and fit with what you think is necessary for good performance? Why not focus instead on how you can unlock and unblock their potential so that you both get what you want from their role in the workplace? So I'm going to tell you a story. I recently asked for no surprises at work, to know what meetings were about ahead of time, and to be clear on processes. Don't get me wrong, I love processes. I like knowing what they are because then I can follow them. And I was in an environment where processes were changed without it being communicated to me, where meetings were called at before official work start time with no topic or heading, so I had no chance to prepare. And not surprisingly, I didn't cope well in that environment. I went from being a top performer to someone who was struggling and actually labelled as not behaving appropriately for the professional environment. Okay? But can you see how, with a different form of leadership where those needs were actually respected and listened to, it would have been very different. So my challenge to you as leaders is, what are you doing to optimize the work experience of every single one of your employees, however their brain is wired, whatever their challenges, whatever the opportunities they bring to your team? Your role as a leader is to know them as individuals, as human beings, and create the environment where they can thrive, because that way you're going to thrive, and so is your organization. This is Kathy Syrett from Confident Leader Journey here. I hope you found this vlog interesting. If so, head over to our Facebook page, the Confident Leader Journey Facebook page, and let me know what you think. Take care.